All right, back again, trying to see how succinct, how, it's probably good I'm doing this rehearsal. Maybe I'll be more succinct when I actually go back into the studio and do the actual audiobook. So I'm actually going to do two things simultaneously. I'm going to record, I should show you, it took me a long time to set it up. I got a Zoom recorder for the audio, so I can record all the audio completely separate. Boom, there's my audiobook, done. Then I've got the iPhone, well, this thing right here, and I'll have it set up on the horizontal instead of the vertical. And then I'll shoot myself while I'm recording that, and I've got my nice condenser microphone and the pop filter and everything. And then I have this book on a wooden music stand that I made back in the late 70s, right, about 78. And I was thinking of that yesterday. So let's see, and then I'll have this over here, I'll have the microphone here, I'll be shooting there, and I'll be able to do that. So that's kind of what I'm warming up to. Is being able to do this book a little more succinctly, perhaps, not so much rambling. This is a book is dedicated to Lao Tzu. Now, remember, he's the guy who created. He didn't. He just created 80 little paragraphs. He's the author of the Dao Te Ching, and I call it the Book of Changes. And basically, it's a book about all things changing. So it's a perspective. Don't take that word at all literally. It's just the book of how everything's changing, and is never the same, and there's always something. That's the explanation for the translations. Like I said, don't get all whimsical and don't get all those spiritual things. That's not what it's supposed to be. Okay, that was added. People trying to compete with Christianity or replace Christianity. God, you should see what they did to Buddhism. Oh my goodness. The Japanese have just, it's like there's more Christianity in the Japanese Buddhism now, it seems, than there is even Buddhism. It's amazing how much of the Christianity type information they put in there so that the people wouldn't feel like they're missing out on anything. And it's totally political, and it's anyway, there's many flavors of Buddhism. The original Buddhism, if we could just kind of lump all the original ones from when Buddha was alive, which is one, that's the original Buddhism. So up to the time that he was alive, that was the original Buddhism. And let's just take everything like right there. That's why I like to look at Christianity. It's like what happened right there. And I wish that actually they'd written it down at the time so we might really know what happened. But when he was alive, that's the original Buddhism. Now, the next phase of Buddhism was it got to China. Well, there's all kinds of phases, but the Tibetan Buddhism, as it migrated up into the mountains, and they blended it with the Bon, Bon religion. And that's where they got the mantras and the chanting. They just already had that. And they said, okay, you can keep doing that. Just add this Buddhism. So that's what they did. See, Buddhism doesn't have as many regulations. So all that stuff has nothing to do with Buddhism. The mantras, the chanting, the Book of the Dead, nothing. That was all already there. And then the Buddhism just kind of attached itself to it. They said, you can keep it. They didn't care. This Buddhism is kind of like, it's just psychology. So that's a whole different stuff. But then some of it didn't go to Tibet. It went over to China. And the stuff in China we call Mahayana, which means greater wheel. In other words, you don't depend on the books so much, too. I like to think of it as life is experiential. So it's the bigger wheel Buddhism kind of thing. The smaller wheel is the book. That's kind of the way I look at it. The Theravadins, or I think are what they're called, the people who really put all their emphasis on the book. Now, the book, like I said, has the information, but it's not, if you start to, once again, try to hammer everybody into that shape of that book, then you're kind of using the religion to contain people rather than free them. All right, so where were we? The Buddhism in China was the Mahayana Buddhism, and that was already there when Bodhidharma traveled over from India and visited there. And he's considered to be the 28th patriarch. I think it was maybe about the time of that. I don't know if they were how formal that was or anything like that, but that's the kind of title they get him. He would have been about the 28th generation of Buddhas in Buddhism. And remember, everybody's a Buddha that gets it. You're supposed to, that's the whole idea of Buddhism, is to make Buddhas. It's not like Buddhism all of a sudden just created one Buddha, then nobody else could do it. It's like, no secret. Yeah, that's actually what Buddhism is what is the formula to create a Buddha? That's all it is. So the secret to create a Buddha is know what the Four Noble Truths are, and then live a life accordingly, and you're a Buddha. That's it. Okay, now, where were we? I'm sorry. There was one more link in the Buddhism chain. I can't see all these pictures, but that Buddhism was Mahayana. So when Bodhidharma came there, he was basically very similar to me. I think I really relate to the guy. Everything I've learned and know about him seems like me a lot. I don't know if he was a musician, but anyway, he was definitely a kung fu martial artist, and his style was Kalari Payatu. He brought that over every day from India. So anyway, he came up to the Shaolin temple and retired. There's a whole story on him, I'll tell another time. And he created Zen Buddhism. So that's the Zen Buddhism. Came from the Shaolin temple. But like I said, he was also a martial artist, so he created Shaolin Kung Fu. So for several hundred years, or 600 years, or maybe 1,000 years, maybe 1,000 years at least, 1,000 years from 600 to 1600 AD, everyone that did Shaolin Kung Fu was a Shaolin Buddhist. That's it. They were a Zen Buddhist. So they were all these Zen Buddhists doing Shaolin Kung Fu for 1,000 years. Then it became public. And the public just said, oh, I love those dances. Forget the Buddhism. And so they stripped all the Buddhism. They stripped off the Qigong. They stripped off the advanced spiritual training. And they just said, show me how to hurt somebody. And that's what Shaolin Kung Fu became. And so that's why I'm glad to revive it, make it what it's supposed to be. It's a way of life. It's not a way to hurt people. Sorry. That's not what people want to hear. People like hurting people. I mean, we're basically like Nero. Nero is able to just pacify, be an evil person. But he was able to keep the masses in order because he knows that they're evil too, and he give them lots of violence and parties and food and wine, and that's what we're doing today. Buy off everybody's integrity. So don't get sucked in by your violence. Hey, where are we in time? Remember I said about 6 minutes? 7:05. Okay, so let's see. Leave it at that for right now, and I'll come back and get all this out of my system so when I actually record this audiobook, I won't jabber so much.